Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another amazing episode on the Unleashing Potentials podcast. Joining me today is special guest Philippa. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Recovering, so you get my sexy throat voice today.
Yeah, I hope you're recovering and feeling better.
Thank you.
You're
I'm
welcome.
much better. Mm.
Yeah, can you tell us where in the world are you tuning in from, Philippa?
I am on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland, Australia. So it's
Ooh,
a beautiful space. Yeah.
that's awesome. Well, it's a frozen place here. It's cold, cold in Canada. Yeah. Welcome,
Yeah,
welcome. Yeah, so
thank you.
Philippa, can you start by telling us who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I am a mother of four. I have four daughters. I have a grandbaby girl. I'm um, I've been with my husband for 26 years now, and I'm a mad chicken lady. I have a lot of chickens. I have cows. But what I do is work with parents. Um, Most of the time I'm working with parents or parents to be. And so in the last 20 years, I became a doula, a childbirth educator, and then began working as a perinatal therapist using a modality called TRTP. And so I work predominantly with parents who have some sort of distress or trauma, or they've got unconscious scripts that they want to rewrite. They don't want to parent like their parents, or they don't want to parent from that trauma that they experienced. So we heal that and fix it, and they get a fresh start.
Mm, that's beautiful work that you do. I love that. How long have you been a doula for?
Well, when my first baby was born, almost 21 years ago, it was a pretty shitty experience. In fact, I experienced obstetric violence in my first two births. And so my first birth was really the catalyst that made me go, hey, something's not right there. And the way I was treated, the way I was coerced, and the way I was pushed into that induction meant that I ended up with a surgery that I didn't actually need, and that my baby didn't need. And so I became a doula. So I think it's 20 years come December that I graduated. And I think my first birth was sometime around March 2004. So we're coming up very quickly on that 20-year mark.
That is
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. So that was, yeah, it's been a long time. And I have come and gone from it. Being a doula can burn you out. So I moved over into corporate world in around 2013 for about 5 years, and 5, 6 years even, and that burnt me out even worse. So and that's when I discovered the modality I use now.
Mm, yeah, that's really awesome. What is the modality that you use? Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So it's called TRTP for short, but it's the Richards trauma process created by a fantastic, amazing woman named Judith Richards, whose lived history of trauma is what brought this healing about. She was looking for answers. And so this is the solution that she created along the way to healing her own trauma, which was extensive and certainly not something to go into for the general public, because it's very intense. But she healed her body, and she healed her soul and her subconscious, and she was approached to teach people how to do this, because the results she was getting working with other people after healing were just phenomenal. And I was one of those people that found TRTP as an aside when I developed adrenal fatigue in the corporate world and fell apart some 16 years after having my first baby and 10 years after my fourth. I went looking for a new job, thinking, well, maybe if I just change jobs, there'll be less pressure. And anyway, what I found was a job that was calling to me. And it was actually a job with Judith Richards, helping in her training organization. Anyway, I devoured all the YouTube channels, and I thought, as I was learning and reading, I just became more and more grateful that this woman was on the planet and that she had created what she had. And I was determined that I was going to do this process so that I could heal what was holding me back. And sure enough, I, in 3 sessions, so across 15 days, my adrenal fatigue lifted and I became the person I knew I could be. And, it's not fairy dust, so there's still work to be done, right? You've got to grow and change and learn and all of those things, which is what makes life fun. But the pressure was out of my bubble and I was able to move forward in that endeavor to becoming who I wanted to be. And so I wrote her an email initially. I said, I don't care if you don't give me the job, but get me onto a good practitioner. I did the work, reached out to her again afterwards and went, wow, like just wow. Thank you again. And I met with Judith and her team, and we hit it off, and I did end up going to work for her, which was amazing because she's so incredible. But I got to really learn. It was about 2 days in. I said, Jude, I'm going to have to learn how to do this. She said, fuck yes, you are.
Yeah.
And if you don't take this to women with birth trauma, I will be so, so upset. Because that's, she has a heart for that. And she knew that that's my background. That's where my specialty is in that birth world. And having experienced and healed from birth trauma and obstetric violence, and having run support groups for years and so on for women, I understand it quite uniquely.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did.
Oh, that's so cool. That's really, really cool. You manifest your future, my friend.
I did. I've done that a few times. It's really
Wow.
quite interesting. Yeah. It's very interesting how it works. In fact, one of my old dream boards from 2011 came up on my Facebook feed the other day, and I was like, wow, I've pretty much got all that now.
Oh, that's really cool. And I love the
Yeah.
work that you're doing because I have birth traumas and I've talked to many other women who have trauma from birth. And there was a lady I interviewed. Yeah, her trauma is severe and she's still healing from it. And
Yeah.
I think it's advocacy, right? Because when women are in that space and so much pain and confusion, it's hard to properly advocate for themselves. Would you say that's true in your experiences?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The only way to have a birth where, unfortunately, in Western culture, the only way to have a birth where you don't have to advocate for yourself or question is to be able to choose a care provider who has the same philosophy around birth as you do. When you have a care provider who believes what you believe around birth, then you're aligned. And in that alignment means there's no conflict. Now, that's how it should be. That's what women deserve. Women deserve care providers who have the same philosophy as them so that they can birth without complication, without coercion, without, and if what you believe is that birth should be surgical and planned and scheduled, well, then great. You can find a care provider who has has an aligned philosophy. They're easy to find. What's
Yeah.
not easy to find are care providers who trust women, who actually trust that birth is something that women can do and that inherently comes with risk, just as crossing the road does. There is risk to birth, there is risk to everything in life, but who also understands that it's also a normal physiological process for a woman to undergo, and that it doesn't need to necessarily be managed, but observed, protected, and respected. And that's what we're not doing as a Western world. And as a result, what we have, and America is very, very high. I think it's in the top 2 for them. In the numerous other countries, it's within the top 3. But let's call it the top 3. One of the top 3 killers of women in the first year after having a baby, or in that first postpartum year, is actually maternal suicide.
Ooh.
We're not talking about that.
No, I've actually
Right?
haven't heard of that of it being put that way.
Yeah.
We hear about the suicide part, but never that way. Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
So women aren't dying of sepsis. They're not dying of post-birth complications. They're, what I mean, some are, but it's not in the top, one of the top 3 or top 2 in the USA is actually maternal suicide. That means that we have so disempowered these mums that they are prepared to take themselves out of the picture. And unfortunately, they're also doing it quite violently. Some of these women don't recognize themselves so much that they are literally violently removing themselves from the planet, which isn't a normal feminine way to leave the planet. If they unlive themselves, they tend to do it in a way that preserves their physical appearance. And a lot of these mothers are not doing that because they so don't recognize themselves. So the pain that they're experiencing as a result of and it could begin with the fertility journey. It could be during the pregnancy that things happened. It could be during the birth itself or that early postpartum time. And we're not just talking about mothers whose babies haven't survived. We're talking about women whose children have survived, whose children are healthy, but they're not given space and respect, and they're not given quarter to be able to process what's happened to them, and they don't often know how. And as a society, as in culture, we say, well, you have a healthy baby, so you need to just get over it. And all birth is shit. Everybody had to have a bad birth, so you should just get on with it, right? Because we've all had to live through it. We all survived. Just move on. But that's actually not helpful. It's not helpful, and it's not actually accurate. And because we don't have to have a crap birth, we can actually have incredible, respectful births that allow us to sit in our power and find out who we are as mothers. And let me tell you, when you have to dig deep for birth, it's going to serve you well when you're dealing with teenagers, right? Those things are a whole nother story, right?
Yeah.
So it's about women being able to become mothers, but when we invalidate their journey and their feelings, we're actually doing them a disservice. We are not distracting them with their healthy, precious baby. They already know, they're already grateful for their precious, healthy baby. What they don't know how to do is get themselves back, and they don't know how to heal from the trauma.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. I had a teen pregnancy, and
Yeah.
there are millions of women around the world that have teen pregnancies, whether it's by choice or not by choice. From my experience, I felt that I was shamed
Mm.
for specifically by the religious community or older family members, just shame and disgusted for getting pregnant so young. I'm not married. I don't have a man in the house. And so it was hard. It was a type of grief that I've never felt before until I had a
Mm.
kid young. What would you say to teen moms and also those people who are shaming moms?
So my grandbaby is born to her mother was 19 when she fell pregnant, and 20 when she gave birth to her. Um, and she just had so she's 7 months old shortly in a few days time, Sunday. So she's such a precious little thing. I guess there's a couple of things. I mean, she had the most incredible home birth. She birthed with the respect and the support of two midwives and myself. The child's father and her broke up 2 weeks before the baby was born. Um, and she she got on, she did this thing. Now for her, birth is not scary. Birth was something that she'd been brought up to respect. She knew it was going to be hard work, but she also knew that it was within her physiology and within her power to birth this baby. Now we certainly didn't shame her. And it was quite interesting because all of the professionals around her, I had a woman work with her who was a midwife. She does body work and so on, and she marveled at how beautifully supple and incredible it was to work with such a young body. That she's actually in the prime space to give birth to a baby. And 200 years ago, 19 would have been old to have a baby, right? So it's purely a cultural thing to take that stance that she's too young. She's actually perfectly capable of birthing, breastfeeding, and looking after a child. And she does it with so much fun. She has, in my experience watching, over 20 years watching new mums move into that space, young mums tend to adapt so much better because they're just growing up with their children, and it's beautiful to watch. And so they adapt to the change in lifestyle quite well. They don't have the same amount of patience often as older mums do. They tend to exhibit a greater sense of patience. But young mums actually have this incredible vitality, and they bounce back quite quickly. Now, what's really important for all mums, but young mums in particular, is community. It's actually support. So, what we do when we shame, what we do when we cause people to feel bad about themselves, is we actually we disempower them from the get-go. We tell them that they're not enough. We tell them that we doubt them. When in actual fact, what we should be doing, especially with young mums, is building them up. We should be supporting them in the small ways and in the big ways, and telling them that they've got this. We'll support them. We'll teach them what they need to know. And when my grandbaby was born, I said to my daughter, your first job is to learn how to feed this baby and to recover. So that's all she did for days. She just learned to feed and she recovered physically because it's a big thing.
Yeah.
Now, on about day 4, 3 or 4, I taught her how to change the nappy. Right? Then on the next day, I taught her how to change her baby's clothes. And we just on day 10, we gave her her first bath. And we just gradually added new things to the mix because she's learning a whole new thing. So as grandmothers, as family, as community, the best thing you can do for a new mum is not shame her. It's not going to change the situation. And think about, well, why am I doing that? What cultural norm am I perpetuating by shaming someone? What does it achieve? Does it even make me feel better to do that? What's the purpose, right? And I think very often we do things because because that's what we do. And we actually don't think very often about, why are we doing it? What's the purpose behind it? You know,
Mhm.
and I had to have that conversation with my mum. Why would I kick her out? What purpose does that serve? Who benefits from that? And just because that's how you experienced it, because she was an unwed mother back in the 70s when that wasn't a thing, and my older brother, who was adopted out at birth, has just been for a holiday. You know, what are we doing? And what is the next generation experience when we shame and when we make life harder for young mums? They shouldn't be shamed. They should be supported and given as much community as they can.
Yeah.
That's my rant. That's what I'd be saying,
Oh,
Tara.
no, I agree. I absolutely agree. And it's important. And I'm just honored to meet someone like you, to talk to you, because when it comes to that, I feel that you understand, because you've helped so many women and your daughter through that journey. So, do you work with people from around the world, or just where you are?
Oh, I sure do. I do. I work with families all over the world, and that's as long as you're English speaking, we're good. We can find a
Yeah.
time zone that works, and I love doing that because there are so many countries around the world where women and men could, because men experience birth trauma too, and nobody's even talking to them about that. Nobody's even saying at the end of the day, mate, are you okay? What, like, how is that for you?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
They do.
They yeah, they're watching the most important person in their world do something they don't understand, they've never experienced, they can't help with, they can't fix, and then potentially people are walking in, saying, oh, well, if you don't do this, your baby will die, and and it's really can be very traumatizing for them. And then there's so little support. So yeah, I work with people all over the world. I just have to change my language a little bit. In Australia, we call an elevator a lift. And and you go, when I'm working with somebody over there, they're like, what? What's a lift?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
So cool.
that's
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah. You talked about adrenal fatigue earlier.
Mm.
I have severe chronic fatigue all the time, and it has to do with my meds. But can you expand more on that?
Yeah, I'd love to. So when we experience um, when we experience trauma or a distressing event or a period of stress, we release stress hormones, right? And your adrenals are one of the things um, that go into action. You've got to run from a tiger. You need your adrenals to get you through that, right? So it'll release extra hormones and chemicals for you to get through that. Now, it also shuts down different parts of your body. So when you're running from said tiger, you don't need to digest your Wheaties, so your gut shuts down, right? Breakfast isn't important anymore, so gut shuts down.
Yeah.
Um, and it also shuts down parts of the brain. Now, part of the brain that shuts down is part that's responsible for long-term memory. When the memory part of the brain, um, if once the event is over, if you're not in balance, if your system, and let's face it, most of us in the Western world didn't start in a balanced environment. You're either in my experience, the victim of childhood trauma, um, because of abuse, neglect, or there's a whole lot of people who experience childhood trauma in overstimulation and overactivity, right? They're taken from one activity to another every day of the week, and they just never get to chill, right? So you've got all of these different things that impact us, but we're not in a normal environment where we get to have stress and then it's over.
Mhm.
So when a system's not in balance, sometimes that memory part of the brain can stay in shutdown mode. It doesn't do its job, kick back on and go, oh, that event's over now. We can put it into long-term memory, put a date on it, and it's finished. What happens is it sits in the unconscious. That's where trauma is stored. Undealt with or unfinished trauma is stored in the unconscious. It's happening now, it's happening now, it's happening now. And so it's like a videotape loop running. Now, the unconscious is running your body. It's running every chemical reaction, every heartbeat. You don't have to think about breathing or your thyroid doing its thing. The unconscious is running all of that. But if the unconscious thinks that we're still in a traumatic, distressing, or distressful event, it's going to continue to run the body that way, which means that your adrenals, your gut, everything is still firing like it's happening now. I'm not safe. So with TRTP, we do a few things, but one of the things we do is actually shut off those videotape loops in the unconscious so that the hippocampus can be turned back on, file everything away, and then your body and your unconscious return to calm. And so your adrenals can reset, because when you have adrenal fatigue, it's because your body has been sitting, pumping out that adrenal, pumping out those adrenals for too long. And then it just goes, nah, we're not doing this anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
Time's up. And so then you're exhausted, and your brain doesn't function properly and your body starts to shut down. And it's horrible. It's a horrible experience. So when we do this process and we turn that hippocampus back on, everything gets filed away, and it's like, it's actually like you're lighter, and then your body kicks back to calm. It's like a nervous system reset, and it goes, oh, this is nice. we can live like this, right? And so it's a beautiful thing. And it's really quite simple. TRTP is usually only 3 2-hour sessions. And people who've been through years of therapy go, that's not possible. Well, yes, it is.
Yeah.
And it's not talk therapy. That might be why it doesn't take so long. It's because you don't have to tell so much of your story. And most people don't want to tell their story again. They've told it. So we
Too
don't have
many
to.
times. Yeah.
Totally, right? You don't want to do that again. Just brings it all up, makes you have to deal with it all again and feel it all again. We just fix it. It's wonderful.
Yeah. That's why people don't go to therapy. If they go, I still have to go to therapy, and I just say I'm not talking about this. Right? Over time, I built a resistance to protect myself, because it was being brought up too many times by too many doctors, too many people. I said, that's it. Don't ask me about this again. I'm not talking about it again. If you want me to come back to see you, you're going to have new questions for me and new things for me to work on. And that's why people don't do therapy.
Yeah.
They keep opening the wound and picking at it. They're not giving it time to heal.
That's right. And when, we develop a scab over it in order to protect ourselves and to protect the environment from getting worse. What doesn't necessarily change is that the wound is still under the scab. And so what we do with TRTP is change the so it's one thing to look back at a memory and remember that time and say, yeah, that was shit. That was painful. It's a whole nother thing to look back at a memory and experience pain at the remembering. So if you've got an emotional charge, when you remember that experience, it's not done. But if you can look, when when healing is complete, because you can look back at that experience and you can remember that it was shit, but not experience any pain or distress or emotional charge. That's when healing has truly happened. But most people have never even had the opportunity to experience what that's like, because their whole system is out of balance. Now, when I work with women with birth trauma, I can promise you nobody comes to birth trauma without having other shit happen first,
Yeah.
right? There are
Yeah.
no unicorns out there. We've all had stuff happen. And so the best thing for me about this process that I do is that we get to do all the stuff. We get to take we deal with everything. We don't individually have to deal with it all. So hence another reason why it doesn't take so long. We don't individually deal with it all, but we deal with it, and it addresses the other stuff as well, not just the birth trauma. So if you don't know if you've got birth trauma or not, but you know that you feel like crap, then come see me anyway, because chances are, even if it's not the birth trauma, we can still fix it.
Oh, you're speaking my language. You are, because it's a chain reaction. It's
Mm,
never one thing. And
no,
it could be years that's piled up of trauma from parents, siblings, the culture, the society, the school, all of it.
yes,
And sometimes we blame one thing or two because it's easier, but we still
yes.
don't know exactly. We're not tapping into the actual issue to find it. How can we find those wounded places in us to heal?
Well, again, I think it's about thinking back to those experiences and saying, does that still have an emotional charge for me? You know, is that something that I experience pain when I remember? That'll tell you whether or not it's been healed or not. The danger in doing that is that if you sit there and you don't have somebody to help guide you through the healing, is that it will fester because you've just picked at it, right? Um,
Yeah.
so my professional opinion would be do that when you're in the presence and in the you have the capacity to actually heal through that with somebody who can guide you. And every coach needs a coach. Having somebody else to do this work with is really, it's fabulous because other people see things from a different perspective, right? And they can help you show up for you, because it's all about support. It's funny in the Western culture how we so value independence, right? We value independence, we value doing it ourselves. But what does every single human being truly crave?
Connection,
Connection,
goodness, yeah.
right? Connection.
We're thinking the same. Yes, yes.
Right? So we crave connection. So reach out and be connected. It's in that connection that synergy happens and that we can actually truly expand on who we are, and where we're going. So don't be afraid to reach out and connect with somebody who can help take you to the other side of your pain. No good sitting in your pain. We don't want that. Like, I know if you start telling me your story while we're in therapy, I'm like, don't tell me. I don't want to hear it. I don't need the whole story. If I have a question, I'll ask you, and I'll give you 2 sentences to answer it in, because I don't want you sitting in your story,
Mhm.
right? Because it's not helpful for most people. Now, if you've never told your story before, if you have never shared your story with a human being who gets it and who can hear and understand you, then you need to do that at least once. That's important. But if you've already done that, you're done. You don't need to do it.
Yeah, yeah. Some of us get stuck in a robotic loop. We
Yeah.
just keep saying it, not we don't always understand how to stop. Maybe it's a
Yes.
defense mechanism to kind of shield and protect us from feeling. I don't know.
Yes.
And
Yeah, and
Mhm,
sometimes it's just about processing too. So sometimes we feel that if we talk about it enough, the answer will come.
mhm,
Right? The problem with memory is that it actually evolves and changes. And as we continue to tell the story, that memory can change and evolve as well. And if we get stuck in our story, we can turn the story into something more dramatic or more painful than what we originally experienced, because we're still, you know, that's human nature, right? The stories can get lost, and our memory can change around an experience. So it's, you know, the sooner you can deal with something, the better, if, you know, in terms of truly healing it. But if it's from decades ago, it's still possible. I worked with a woman, and there's actually an interview. I interviewed her on my website. Um, and her birth trauma was 34 years old. She had PTSD from it. So this woman had had 6 children, and the PTSD developed with her fifth baby's birth. And so she brought up 6 children with PTSD. And to look at her now, she's just so incredibly vibrant. She's had such an incredible result. So much so, and she was a midwife, so much so that she's actually gone on to study TRTP, which is
Oh, wow.
wonderful. So she's now practicing herself. Yeah, she just was blown away. And we happened to meet at a International Women's Day breakfast. um, and you know, so it was a chance encounter, but such a phenomenal change for her. So it's never too late, but generally speaking, the sooner the better to deal with it, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's why my logo on the podcast is Healing Together.
yeah,
Took me a while to come up with that. Wait, can I heal by myself? No, but I have a therapist, right? Healing together. I believe together we can do more, become more, and help each other more and empower each other.
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. I'm writing an ebook at the moment. I was going to do it as a course, but I'm just going to do it as an ebook, I think, because people will find it easier to absorb, I think. But um, for 20 years, I've been helping teach women how to create community and
Mm,
tap into the that sisterhood. And a lot of us have mother wounds and sister wounds, and so it can be very hard, very scary. We're living in a very masculine way as women. We often don't even know how to connect back into our feminine side. But part of the female tendency um, is to tend and befriend. It's a trauma response for women. When we have a distressing event, it's part of our natural coding to go and be a part of something with other women, and that's extremely hard to do in our modern world. And because it's not something that we've grown up with, women find it really difficult to do, and they don't know even how to start. How do I create a community? How do I participate in community? And so I'm going to write an ebook to share with women my I've just started, so bear with me a few weeks, but um, but to share with women how and why it's so important, because community is so powerful, and it has the potential to make motherhood so much more rewarding, because we were never meant to do it alone, ever.
mhm,
We were never, ever meant to do it alone.
mhm.
And yet so many women will spend their days alone with their children. That's not how it looks in lots of cultures, even today.
Mhm. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm on a huge mission to help women create community, because if we can support mums, we can
Mhm,
change the whole world.
mhm. Yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah. I had to do it alone,
Yeah.
and it was hard. Still is. I'm still doing it alone, right? But I remember I had a C-section and I was
Mm,
limping around to feed myself. I was severely sleep deprived. So I don't wish it on anybody because it's not easy at all,
no,
not easy. And I'm
No.
grateful you're helping women building community.
Yeah, it feels like an honor to share what I learned because I'd had when I had my first baby, my parents moved to Sydney, and I said to my husband, well, maybe we move up to Townsville to be where his parents were, thinking that, that might be useful to me to have family around. Anyway, little did I know that they were not very helpful. But we we were 40 minutes out of town. We had I was on my own for all day because I'd leave the house at 4 o'clock to go to work, and they wouldn't get back until about 5. And they'd eat the dinner that I cooked, and then they'd all go to sleep on the couch, right? Like they'd just all pass out because they'd had such a big day. And so I was alone with this baby, and she was 3 months old. And so I would sit in mothers' rooms and do all sorts of things to try and connect with other women. And eventually, through a lot of trial and error, I found my tribe.
Mm.
And that was we're talking back in the days pre-Facebook, right? So nowadays every community's got a thing you can put a post up and say, hey, who wants to hang out? I need some community, right? Like we didn't have that back then. Um so that was, but eventually I found my tribe, and then I participated in it in a way that taught them what was acceptable and what was
Mhm.
wanted. I grew up in the Salvation Army. My parents were ministers in the Salvation Army, and the one thing I adore about the Salvation Army is that it's very practical.
Mm.
They put their money where their mouth is. They don't just pray for the homeless. They go and give them a blanket and a meal
Mm.
and provide them with accommodation or whatever is needed.
Mm.
And so what I learned in those years was that it's all good to say, can I help you? But it's so much better to show up with a meal and find that basket of washing that's just been hidden
Mm.
and fold it, get it away, do a pile of dishes or stack the dishwasher,
Mm.
make her a snack, put the meal on to heat or whatever has got to happen, and
Mm.
then leave her feeling supported and loved.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
but we're not taught to do that, and often, you might have experienced it as a new mum. People say, oh, let me know if I can help,
Mhm.
and every woman goes, yeah, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
Right. I'm okay, I've got it, so good, because we don't know how to accept help. We don't know how to ask for it because we're not taught that, because we're supposed to be able to have it all. We're supposed to be able to work and have a family and do it all.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's actually not how it's made to be. We
Yeah.
should be working together.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Yeah,
so
I
stay
agree.
tuned for that ebook.
Yeah, yeah, very exciting. Can you tell me, is this your logo in the background? Fantastic Futures? Tell me
It
more.
sure is.
Oh, nice.
Well, that's my mission. My mission is to create fantastic futures for families. Um,
Mhm.
when we as parents can parent from a place that doesn't bring our unconscious scripts,
Mhm.
when we aren't parenting for, how many times have you said something and gone, huh, when did I turn into my mother? Right? Like, or
Yeah.
man, I can hear my dad in that one, right? Um,
Mhm.
but that wasn't, but then that causes us to think back to how we experienced that as a child,
Mhm.
and then we question whether or not, but we unconsciously parent from that space because that's what we know, and that's what's programmed in. So what I'm on a mission to do is to help with people rewrite those scripts,
Mhm. Mhm.
rewrite them in a way that we consciously choose. And
Mhm.
there's a whole movement around conscious parenting, right? And conscious parenting is fabulous as an idea, but it only works if you don't have unconscious scripts.
Mhm.
Because when, for want of a better phrase, when shit hits the fan, it's your unconscious script that you default to, not your conscious script. And it's really, really, really hard to work in the conscious all the time, right? Because the conscious mind is only working 10% of the time. 90% of the time your unconscious is working. So it's what's running the show. So if you're the idea is to rewrite the unconscious stuff so that you can do conscious parenting unconsciously, right? Where it's easier. It doesn't
Yeah.
take so much effort.
Yeah.
So, and when we do that, when we change the experience that our children have, we at that point um we can then change the world to be a better place. We can impact that generation, the generation after, and on it goes, because we're the product of generational trauma often, right? Most of us have, well, every one of us who's here had parents who or grandparents who survived through 2 world wars.
Yeah.
Now, and or recessions and or other, periods, major periods of stress. And we know that trauma is passed down through the DNA at least 3 generations. So we are often still trying to deal with the stuff that our parents and grandparents passed down to us. We don't have to keep passing that on though, right? If we want to see a change, we have to be the change.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Right? Up to us to break the cycle. So that's what I'm doing. And the goal is fantastic futures, not just meh muddling through. How about we go for fucking fantastic? Sorry. I
Yeah,
am Australian. We do curse.
yeah, I love your vision. I love it. If there's one of the many things I've learned and heard from people is that they don't want to be as screwed up as their parents were. And I'm one of those people.
Yeah.
And I love my mom. She drives me nuts. Sometimes I need space. I can feel her anxiety, right?
Yes.
From however far she is. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's setting those boundaries to say, nope, I'm protecting my peace today. I love you though.
Yes.
Right, right. Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Mhm,
absolutely. So, and your environment is really important.
mhm,
It's extremely important. Um, Bruce Lipton discovered back in the 70s, he did a lot of cell work in the 60s and 70s, very awarded cell biologist. You might have read The Biology of Belief, his book. But what he discovered is that our cells have 2 switches, shut down survival or thriving and growing. There's nothing in between. He also discovered that whether they're on or off is determined by environmental factors, right?
mhm,
So the environment of our thoughts, our living circumstances, our workplace, our geographical location, all of these things can switch us into survival or thriving. And in
mhm.
his book, he says, your body is a community of 50 trillion cells. If you're not thriving, it's the environment, stupid. That's his quote, not mine,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Is he still
So
around?
yeah, I believe so. I believe so. And so, when we're talking about our environment, we do need to protect our environment. And if people are not okay for you, if they're not a positive, not just not okay, if people are not actually building you up, are they worthy of you?
Mm,
Are they worthy of you? And because what we should be surrounding ourselves by are the people who build us up. You can't get rid of your kids, and they're not quite in that space yet where they're going to build you up.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's about everybody else in your space being worthy of you.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Agree. Yeah, thank you for sharing. So let's say you're working with me, for example, what would be the process? Is it coaching, video calls, books? What is it? Do you give
Yeah.
homework?
So So initially we book in a connection call, and it's just an initial consultation, check in to see where you're at, what you're coming for, make sure we're right to work together. And in the first instance, as part of the confirmation email, you'll get a couple of videos to watch, which will give you a bit of an idea, and some of those things I've shared with you today, it gives you a bit of an idea about what to expect, and also help you understand why you're experiencing what you are. Okay. We then book in the 3 sessions. Most people only need 3 2-hour sessions. Sometimes they'll need a fourth, but we won't know that until the 3rd session. But it's not common. So we book in those 3 sessions, and then they're all via Zoom. Prior to the first session, people give me they fill out their homework, so they do their intake forms, and then we go through the process. The first week does require you to listen to the recording that we make together in the first week, and then after that, there's no homework, but we do leave you with things to implement over those first few weeks. We meet again a month after the 3rd session, check in with where you're at, and you can choose to have ongoing coaching, but it's no longer therapeutic. It's just coaching. It's just around, this is what I'm facing. What's the best way to deal with this? Or these are some new skills that I'd like to learn, or help me get good at managing my ADHD or whatever, right? So
Yeah.
because we can all continue to learn stuff, right? So you can do ongoing coaching, but I don't actually, with the exception of new parents who want ongoing coaching for that sort of first year of having a baby, I don't lock anyone into ongoing coaching until they've finished TRTP, because you may find you're like, I'm good. I'm I'm good. I don't need to do this. And so we leave that open until afterwards. And then if people want to, regularly check in, we can do that. So yeah, I do run coaching stuff. I have a overcome from overwhelmed to empowered parenting course that starts in February. I'm just developing a vaginal birth after Caesar versus repeat cesarean section course for dads and partners, so that they can learn everything they need to know to help their partner make a decision and feel confident in that, because nobody's talking to dads about this stuff, right? And having been down that journey myself, and my husband being down that journey, and having supported lots and lots of families in that, it's a really important space to make sure dad's on board and has the information as well. So yeah, there's a number of other things in the wings, but for if you're working with me for the therapy, it's really quite simple. 3 Zoom sessions and a catch up Zoom later on. It's
Yeah.
easy.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
super easy.
Yeah. So, Philippa, what are some key takeaway points that you want my guests to get out of this very episode?
Number 1 would be that if you encounter someone with birth trauma, or who is overwhelmed in their parenting and have experienced a distressing time, whether it's during birth or any time in that perinatal space, so conception through to that first year, please don't invalidate what they have to say. Please don't tell them they should be grateful they have a healthy baby. They know that. They are grateful. But they're also feeling things. They're also not okay. So instead of dismissing their feelings, just listen. Listen, and then maybe give them my details so that they can reach out and get some support. But don't invalidate that. Secondly, if if you are the community around someone who's had a baby, get out your I go to the op shops. Do you call them op shops, secondhand stores? And I buy old casserole dishes, right? And I take meals, and then I leave them with those casserole dishes, so they sit in the cupboard. And I tell them, when it's your turn, when somebody else around you has a baby, it'll be your turn to take this dish and pass it on. So start thinking about how you in your community can create a culture that supports families in practical ways. What can you do to really show up for someone else without expecting to receive back, without expecting to hold the baby? How can you, what would you have wanted, right? And then do that. What's your superpower? Mine's hanging washing. I love hanging washing, right? And we don't put things in the dryer here in Australia because it's pretty sunny. So most of the time everything goes on the clothesline, right? If you're and I love pegging that out because it's I don't know, it's really therapeutic, and thankfully because I have a 16-kilo washing machine and it gets hammered every day. So think about what you can do. What can you bring to the picture? Thirdly, if you are struggling, if you're not okay, if you look back at your experiences, any of your experiences, and feel pain at the remembering, then you have healing to do. I'd love to support you to heal through that because it is possible. I'm living proof that it's possible.
Yeah.
And it's an absolute joy to see, I have women call me and they're in tears for the whole first hour when we're just getting to, see if we're right to work together. And by the end of it, the smiles are huge and the peace and calm that emanates from them is just glorious. And that's possible. It is possible. I don't want you to give up hope, and I don't want you to feel like you have to sit here forever. You can experience true, lasting healing.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. I have 2 questions for you as we wrap up.
Sure.
Ready?
Yeah.
First one, what is the meaning of life for you?
The meaning of life for me. I think for me, I've always been, I've always striven to leave the world a better place than where I came into it from. I want to be impactful. So for me, the meaning of life, I guess, is about connecting in a way that changes the world for the better. And you don't have to do that from a stage. You can do that just impacting every life that you touch, every person that you come in contact with.
Yeah, I love that. I'm a behind the scene ninja.
I
I just
love it.
do it behind the scene. I'm in the community. I blend in, and I just do good when I can, as much as I can. I love that too. Yeah. Last question as we wrap up. Where can my listeners find you, support your work, and work with you?
Good question. So I have my TikTok and my YouTube are Birth Trauma Buster. My website is fantasticfuture.com.au. I couldn't get the S, so it's fantasticfuture.com.au. Is a first world problem right there, right? I'm on Instagram and Facebook under Fantastic Futures. I have, what else do I have? Oh my gosh. I have that. What is it? X now instead of Twitter. I have
So
all
many.
sorts of
I know.
so many things, right? So many
Yeah.
things. And yeah, look, if you want to support my work, get on and follow and share. with others, the things, I spoke on my page yesterday. I wrote a piece around healing or redemptive births, and the idea that we can fix birth trauma with a healing or better birth next time, and how that's a really flawed concept, but women need to hear that. My reach is only so much, but when you get on and you share those things to your pages and to the people that you see, then they get to hear that, because they wouldn't have otherwise necessarily come across me. So, sharing my work and my words is a great way to support me. If you want to work with me, it's pretty easy. Just click on the book now and book in for a complimentary consultation, and we'll see if we're right to work together.
Mm, mm. Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's through your website that they book?
Yeah, they can. There's a spot there. I think there's a spot even on Facebook where you can press the book now spot, or the Calendly link. But yeah, on my website, there's definitely, if you go to services, I think the top one is the complimentary discovery call.
Mm, yeah,
Yeah.
awesome. Well, Philippa, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for all you do, and thank you for sharing your journey with us.
Thank you so much for having me, Bernadette.
You're
It's been a
welcome.
pleasure.
You're welcome.